Ejike and Ego were born into families of great pride and expectations. Their parents, like many, dreamed of seeing their children successful, sons becoming wealthy men, and daughters marrying into happiness and respect. Ejike and Ego carried these expectations like a cloak sewn into their very existence. Everyone believed that the two were destined for each other. Ejike was every parent's dream son. Intelligent, handsome, and hard-working, he moved through life with quiet confidence, earning admiration wherever he went. He was the pride of his father, who reminded him daily that his success would uphold the family's honor and legacy. Ego was equally exceptional. Beautiful and strong-willed, she was the kind of woman whose presence left an impression on anyone she met. Her laughter was soft but full of life. Her grace, matched with her determination, made her parents believe she would bring only joy to any man who married her. Their bond started early. Ejike and Ego grew up together, sharing childhood games, teenage struggles, and the unspoken understanding of two souls connected by years of familiarity. Their friendship was pure, their connection unshakable. To the world, it was only a matter of time before friendship turned into marriage. But as they grew older, Ejike and Ego began to feel the weight of expectation crushing their dreams. Ejike wanted more than the life set before him. The constant reminders of legacy and honor became chains he longed to break. He dreamed of traveling beyond the borders of his town, of building something that was his own, free of his family's influence. Ego's dreams mirrored his. She wanted an education, to stand tall in a world where women were often expected to blend into the shadows of men. She wanted to make her own choices, live a life she could call her own, not one dictated by tradition. When Ejike's father called for their engagement to be formalized, Ejike and Ego felt the ground shift beneath them. The families rejoiced as preparations began. Gifts were exchanged, dates were set, and the community buzzed with excitement. The perfect pair would finally unite. But deep inside, Ejike and Ego knew the truth. It wasn't that they didn't love each other, they did. But love was not enough to fill the void created by unfulfilled dreams. They had spent their lives being told what they should want, yet neither could accept a life lived for others. On the night of the engagement ceremony, Ejike and Ego found themselves alone in the quiet corner of Ego's family compound. Lanterns flickered, and music echoed in the distance. Ejike, his voice low but steady, broke the silence. "This isn't our path, Ego." Ego nodded, her eyes reflecting the tears she fought to hold back. "I know, but how do we tell them? How do we walk away from everything they've built for us?" "We must," Ejike said. "We owe it to ourselves to live a life we choose, not one chosen for us." The decision was made. When the families gathered, smiles wide and hearts full, Ejike stood before them. His voice shook, but he did not falter. "I cannot marry Ego." The words fell like stones, shattering the celebration into stunned silence. Ego stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "I cannot marry Ejike either." Gasps erupted. Mothers cried. Fathers shouted. The elders accused them of bringing shame upon their families. In the days that followed, their decision turned the town against them. Ejike's father disowned him, calling him a disgrace to the family name. Ego's mother wept, mourning what she believed was a broken future. The community branded them as selfish and ungrateful. People pointed fingers as they walked by, whispers trailing like shadows. "They'll regret this," they said. "They think they are too good for tradition." But Ejike and Ego stood firm. With nothing but their dreams and the strength they found in each other, they left. The journey that followed was hard. They faced hunger, rejection, and loneliness. Ejike worked menial jobs in a city where no one knew his name. He learned the value of perseverance, building his dreams from the ground up. Ego, determined to see her education through, studied tirelessly, often under dim candlelight, with barely enough money to survive. Years passed. Slowly, their sacrifices began to bear fruit. Ejike became a successful entrepreneur, creating opportunities not just for himself, but for others who had been told they were not enough. Ego became a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope for women who had been told their dreams were secondary. Still, the scars of their decision remained. One afternoon, after nearly a decade, Ejike and Ego returned to the home they had left behind. Time had softened the sharp edges of the past, but the memories lingered. The streets, once filled with judgment, now watched in awe as Ejike and Ego walked side by side. Ejike's father, now aged and frail, sat on the porch of his home. His once booming voice was now a whisper, but his words carried the weight of years lost. "You have become a man, Ejike. I was blind to your strength. Forgive me." Ego, too, found her mother waiting. The woman who once mourned her daughter's decisions now smiled through her tears. "You proved me wrong, Ego. You became the woman I always prayed you would be." The families who once disowned them now welcomed them with open arms, not because Ejike and Ego had succeeded, but because they had found the courage to live their truth. As they stood beneath the tree where their childhood began, Ejike turned to Ego. "We gave up everything, and yet we gained so much." Ego smiled. "We chose freedom over fear. That was the greatest gift we could give ourselves." Years passed, and the story of Ejike and Ego became a tale spoken in homes, marketplaces, and schools. Their courage to choose their own paths, despite the cost, inspired others who felt bound by expectations. Young men and women who once feared breaking tradition now saw Ejike and Ego as symbols of hope. Teachers used their story to teach students about resilience, dreams, and the power of choice. Even elders who once condemned them now spoke their names with pride, but Ejike and Ego did not rest. Success had never been the final goal. It was only a step towards something greater. Ejike built a foundation that provided education for young boys and girls whose families could not afford it. He remembered the chains of expectation and wanted to give others the freedom to dream. His schools were not just for academics, but also for life lessons. How to be bold, kind, and resilient. He mentored countless youths who came to him with nothing but hope, and he turned that hope into reality. Ego, on the other hand, became a voice that echoed across the nation. She founded organizations that empowered women to pursue education, independence, and self-worth. She traveled from city to village, speaking to mothers, daughters, and grandmothers alike, telling them, "Your dreams matter. You matter." Women who once believed their value lay only in marriage or silence now found strength in her words. One day, Ejike and Ego were invited back to the town they had left so many years ago. It was no longer the same place. The whispers had faded. The judgment had turned into admiration. The town had grown, changed, and opened its heart to new possibilities. A ceremony was held in their honor, where elders and leaders publicly acknowledged the bravery of two young souls who had chosen the harder path. As Ejike stood before the crowd, his voice steady, he said, "We are not here because we were lucky. We are here because we refuse to give up on ourselves and each other. No dream is too big, and no tradition is too strong if your heart leads the way." Ego followed, her words soft but powerful. "It is not enough to live for others' expectations. True happiness comes from living for your purpose, no matter how difficult the road. The courage to begin is all you need." The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, parents who had held tight to outdated traditions now looked at their children differently. Fathers encouraged their sons to pursue their dreams. Mothers told their daughters they could be more than wives or mothers. They could be anything they chose. After the ceremony, Ejike and Ego sat beneath the same tree where their journey had begun. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd stayed?" Ego asked quietly. Ejike smiled, looking into the distance. "We would have lived a life for others, not for ourselves, and we wouldn't be sitting here today, knowing that we made a difference." Ego nodded, her heart full. Every struggle was worth it. Their story did not end there. It became a ripple effect, touching lives they would never meet. Boys named Ejike grew up hearing about a man who had built dreams from nothing. Girls named Ego were taught to be strong, bold, and free. Decades later, as Ejike and Ego grew old, they sat together once more beneath that tree, watching children play in the fields. "Do you regret anything?" Ejike asked. his voice soft. Ego shook her head, her eyes bright despite the years. Not a single thing we lived, truly lived. And as the sun set that evening, their story, one of love, courage and freedom, became immortal. It was no longer just theirs. It belonged to the world, a timeless reminder that the hardest choices often lead to the most extraordinary lives. Years rolled by, and Ejike and Ego became legends, though they lived humbly and simply. The foundation of their work continued to spread like wildfire. Young men and women from distant places came seeking wisdom, guidance, and support. Ejike and Ego welcomed them all, their home becoming a sanctuary for dreamers, wanderers, and those who carried heavy burdens. As they aged, they began to write down their story, documenting every struggle, every triumph, every tear, and every moment of hope. They titled it The Path We Chose. The book, like their lives, carried an unshakable truth. Courage in the face of adversity could move mountains. When The Path We Chose was published, it became a nationwide phenomenon. It found its way into classrooms, libraries, and homes. It was no longer just a story of Ejike and Ego. It became the story of anyone who had dared to dream, dared to break free, and dared to choose a life true to themselves. Years later, one quiet morning, Ego woke up before sunrise. The house was silent, except for the soft chirping of birds outside. She stepped onto the veranda, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, and watched as the first streaks of light painted the sky. Moments later, Ejike joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. They sat side by side, as they had done for decades. "The world feels quieter now," Ejike said with a smile. Ego nodded, sipping her tea. "Maybe that's because we've finally taught it how to listen." They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the town below awaken. The same town that had once turned its back on them was now thriving, alive with dreams and hope. Young girls attended school without question, boys pursued careers without fear, and families spoke with understanding instead of judgment. That morning, a knock at their door startled them. It was a group of young people, eager-eyed and determined. They had come to thank Ejike and Ego personally, to tell them that their lives had been changed by their work. "You gave us hope when we didn't know it was possible," one young man said, holding Ejike's hand firmly. "I read your book, and it gave me the courage to leave home and start my own business." A young woman spoke next, her voice steady and clear. "I was told that as a girl I couldn't go to school. Your story gave me the strength to fight for my education. Now I'm studying to be a doctor." Tears welled up in Ego's eyes as she listened. She squeezed Ejike's hand, feeling the weight of years gone by lift from her shoulders. They had planted seeds that now bloomed into forests of change. When the visitors left, Ejike turned to Ego, his voice soft. "We did it, Ego. We made a difference." Ego smiled. "Not just us, Ejike. We only started the fire. It was always theirs to carry." In the years that followed, Ejike and Ego passed their legacy on to younger generations. They trained teachers, leaders, and mentors, ensuring that their dream of freedom and courage would live on. Their story became a movement, spreading beyond their town, beyond their country, and into the hearts of people worldwide. Even after Ejike and Ego were no longer there, their story endured. Statues were built in their honor, schools were named after them, and every year a festival was held celebrating the Day of Courage. People would gather to share stories of bravery, resilience, and dreams fulfilled. At the heart of the town, beneath the old tree where their story began, a plaque was placed. It read, "To Ejike and Ego, 2 souls who chose the harder path and taught us all how to dream. May we forever follow their light." And so, their legacy lived on, a reminder to generations yet unborn that courage could change the world, that love could endure all trials, and that true freedom lay in choosing one's path, no matter the cost. Ejike and Ego's story reminds us that courage and resilience can shape not just our lives, but the lives of generations to come. Let their journey inspire you to stand firm in your dreams, no matter how tough the road may be. Remember, the path you choose today can light the way for others tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Thanks for watching.